In the elite world of wealth, few people, if any, are richer than the Prince of Brunei. Prince Jeffery of Brunei, brother to the Sultan, has a net worth that some estimate in the trillions, and the spending habits to match. In a lawsuit filed by two of Prince Jeffery's former lawyers, those habits were exposed. 500 Ferraris, 1,300 bedroom estates, and hiring A-list stars for scandalous acts. Welcome to Exposed, Scandalous Files of the Elite, Prince Jeffery of Brunei. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Exposed, Scandalous Files of the Elite. I'm Jim Chapman, your host, and first I want to thank everyone for joining me today for this episode, sharing the content. It helps us grow. Please rate us on whatever platform you're listening on right now. We sure appreciate that. I was listening to the Joe Rogan Experience, and he had Andrew Schultz on his show, and they were talking about a story regarding the Prince of Brunei, Prince Jeffery. And it was so intriguing, I started doing a ton of research as soon as I listened to that episode, and I wanted to bring y'all kind of the full story on this. It's just really bizarre, and this guy was one of the richest, if not the richest people in the entire world. And there's something before I get into this episode that I want to make you aware of, and that is a lot of the Middle Eastern princes and kings and all those sorts of things, sultans, they are a lot richer than what they tell people. They don't have to report income like here in the States. Of course, we're obligated to report our income. They report what they want to report, but estimates say that a lot of these Middle Eastern princes and kings and things like that are worth trillions with a T. Trillions. They just don't claim it. And this would be a good example of that. So in order to tell you this story, I need to give you a little bit of history regarding Brunei. So way back in the day, on the corner of a large island called Borneo, there was a tiny nation, and it's about the size of Delaware. It was called Brunei. Now, for 600 years, royals had literally married their cousins. It was a small nation. Everybody was kind of related to everybody. And for 600 years, that's what they did. True story. So Brunei pretty much went through history unnoticed for that 600 years. Now, that was until 1926 when oil was discovered there. That's right. Black gold, Texas tea, as we say here in the United States. So the nation started to prosper, and by 1984, they gained independence from Great Britain. So Great Britain pretty much ruled over them at that time, but in 1984, they had prospered to the point that they were able to gain their independence from Great Britain. And the Sultan at that time, he was the 29th Sultan, he was gaining tons of popularity and money. I mean, tons of money. The Sultan at that time, as a matter of fact, was the richest man in the world in 1987. And that was just what he claimed. The richest man in the world due to the oil underneath the ground in Brunei. And his worth was listed at $40 billion in 1987. To tell you how much money that is, y'all, today, that will be worth an estimated $115 billion. But, as I just told you, that's reported income. Most experts speculate it was closer to $1 trillion. Now, the Sultan at that time was 41, and he was pretty wild and not afraid to flaunt his wealth. He purchased department stores. He financed arms dealers. He had 17 private jets. He boasted thousands of luxury cars, and he even purchased a painting for over $70 million. $70 million for a painting. You know you got some money when you do that. Now, as much as the Sultan loved money, he also loved his younger brother, Prince Jeffery, and they were a dynamic duo when it came to spending money and excess and all those sorts of things. Jeffery owned a fleet of yachts, and they had some interesting names, to say the least. One of his yachts' name was Tits. You can't make that up. A $200 million yacht with its tenders on that yacht named Nipple 1 and Nipple 2. I got to give the guy credit for being creative, to say the least. But get this, Prince Jeffery owned 500 plus Ferraris. He even had a plane load of polo ponies imported in, an entire plane load, y'all. These are $1 million horses each. He owned a collection of five-star hotels, including some you've probably heard of. The Beverly Hills Hotel, he owned that. The Hotel Bel Air, he owned that. He even owned the world-renowned jewelry manufacturing company called Asprey. He purchased that for $385 million cash. That's how much money these guys had. Now, back at home, the Sultan and Prince Jeffery, they lived in a 1,788-room palace on 49 acres. And on his 50th birthday, Jeffery decided he wanted to have a little concert. So much like we would do, he hires a music artist to come in and perform that. But his music artist he hired was Michael Jackson. He paid $17 million and even built a stadium just for that specific concert. Man, you got some stupid money when you're doing that. On another occasion, Whitney Houston was flown in, and at the end of the concert, she was given a blank check from Prince Jeffery, and he told her just to fill out what she thinks she was worth. So Whitney Houston writes a check to herself in the amount of $7 million. The brothers would travel in 100-member entourages to visit clothing stores all over the world and buy 100 suits at the same time of the same color. You want a gray suit? Let's get 100 of them. Stupid money. They were Muslims, but they indulged in a lot of things outside of the Muslim religion. Islamic law allowed them to have 4 wives, but they were known to step outside of even the 4 wives and have harems, the likes of which the world had never seen. Now, throughout all of this, there was a third brother that I haven't mentioned yet. His name was Prince Muhammad. And he, unlike his other 2 brothers, he was a strict Muslim who had a disdain not only for the indulgence of the Sultan and Prince Jeffery, but also the favoritism shown to Prince Jeffery by the Sultan. So Prince Muhammad, he only had 1 wife, and believe it or not, he flew commercial. He didn't have his own private jet and was waiting for the chance to stop the party. He was watching all this and just waiting for his opportunity. And in 1997, he found it. A former Miss USA, y'all, named Shannon Marketing, sued Jeffery and the Sultan for $10 million. You'd have thought she would have sued for more than that. That's like $5 to them. But she sues them for $10 million, and she claimed that herself and 6 other women had been hired for $127,000 each to travel to Brunei for what they thought were professional appearances, promotional stuff, right? However, she claims they were forced to be sex slaves. She said her passport was seized and she was made to take an STD test and then had to join other women for all-night parties and all that you may imagine were involved in that. She stated that whenever the prince and his posse were on the way to the dance club, an actual disco ball would drop from the ceiling, and that disco ball would signal them to start dancing. It'd start lighting up and turning just like you would picture in your mind. And Jeffery and his friends would then invite their favorites for tea, which was his code for sex. And he used a lot of like code. We'll get into that a little bit. One of Prince Jeffery's aides told the former Miss USA that it would be the biggest honor of her life to sleep with Jeffery because he was half man and half God. Wow. A woman by the name of Jillian Lauren, she actually wrote a book about being in Prince Jeffery's harem and said the sex with the prince was quick, impersonal, and unprotected. She said after her first encounter with the prince, he, quote, slapped her on the ass and bolted out of the bed. And he insisted she call him Robin, which was the name he insisted all his lovers call him, another kind of code thing. She said he would buy his girls he slept with a Maserati. He would give them $100,000 bonus boxes of jewelry and even pay for plastic surgeries, including boob jobs. From time to time, he would also pass them along to his brother, the Sultan. Jeffery denied the allegations in Shannon Marketing's lawsuit, and they were dismissed due to lack of evidence. But the media backlash was very damaging, and American girls actually were no longer invited to Brunei because of the scandal. Then, in 1998, a lawsuit was filed by Bob and Rafi Menorkian. They were Armenian brothers who Jeffery befriended in 1981 after buying suits from them. They were his suit supplier. The Menorcans went on to sell the prince much more than suits. They sold him jewelry, they sold him cars, planes, boats, and real estate. They were kind of brokering deals for him. When Jeffery reneged on a $130 million property deal, the Menorcans sued. Jeffery countersued. He charged the brothers had breached the fiduciary duty by marking up the goods they sold him by anywhere from 100 to 600%. Jeffery didn't testify at the trial, but his lawyers presented the prince as a sucker too out of touch to notice the markups because the Menorcans had posed as close friends. In court, the Menorcans described Jeffrey's sex parties at home and abroad, saying that there were over 747 mostly young women that they kept track of. The attorney called him a man of unlimited taste and one man walking market who bought practically everything he saw, including a rug woven with jewels and threads of solid gold for $7 million. Who doesn't need a rug like that? 10 jewel-encrusted wristwatches that depicted on the hour a couple having sex for $8 million. Yep, a wristwatch that shows a couple having sex on the hour every hour. And erotic fountain pens for $1.3 million. I have no idea what erotic fountain pens are, but for $1.3 million, they better be good. In London alone, the Menorcans charged he kept 40 prostitutes at a hotel and spent $34 million for the former Playboy Club there, which was more than 4 times the market price, so that he could house more hookers and secretly indulge in his passion for gambling. And of course, Jeffery denied employing prostitutes. Now, remember that other brother I was talking about, Muhammad? Well, Muhammad finally convinces the Sultan that Jeffery was going to take him down. And that launches an investigation by the Sultan. And he dispatches 200 forensic accountants, 200, to examine the books and records of Prince Jeffery. And y'all, forensic accounting by itself is expensive with like one company do it. He had 200 separate forensic accountants. That's crazy. The Sultan discovered that during Jeffrey's 15 years as the head of one of Brunei's government entities that was basically over the finance for Brunei, 40 billion in special transfers had been drawn from its account. 14.8 billion had been paid or used by Jeffery himself. 8 billion had gone to the Sultan. Get this, 13.5 billion remained unaccounted for. Jeffery claimed that the Sultan had authorized all the withdrawals, and he said it was inconceivable that $40 billion could have been withdrawn without anyone noticing it over the previous 15 years. The Sultan denied that and countered that Jeffery had embezzled the money. Look, you're not talking about embezzling, even $1 million. You're talking 40 billion. Armed troops eventually searched Jeffrey's palace, and he was ordered to turn over his passport until he signed a settlement agreement in which he promised to return assets, including over 600 properties, 2,000 cars, and over 100 paintings, 5 boats, 9 aircraft, and billions of dollars in possessions he had stored in 21 warehouses. And after swearing to comply fully with the agreement, what do you think Jeffrey did? He left the country, and Jeffrey's spending continued unabated after leaving Brunei. And he shot back at the Sultan saying that they had an unwritten pact and it was supposed to be kept secret, that the Sultan allowed him to support himself by retaining 6 properties as lifestyle assets, including the New York Palace Hotel, the Hotel Bel Air, 2 residences in London, and a home in Paris, and even a trust fund maintained by Citibank. So they got into this feud, and the Sultan's trying to get this money back, and Jeffrey, he's not budging, and it actually became the world's most expensive legal battle in history. The Sultan spent, get this, an estimated $400 million just to track down Jeffrey's wealth. Much of it was squirreled away in bank accounts and shell companies in, areas of the world that are tax havens. So you can't even figure out how much money's in there. In 2000, the Sultan froze Jeffrey's assets through injunctions, but it had little effect. He had sold off untraceable hoards of art, cars, and jewels, and he would just keep the cash and you couldn't trace it. So I told you about what really got me on this story with Prince Jeffery, and that was a conversation that Joe Rogan and Andrew Schultz had about him. This is just about a month ago, and I wanted you to hear that short conversation. So here's what that sounded like on the Joe Rogan Experience.
Like, the Sultan of Brunei's deal?
What is it?
Oh, my God. The Sultan of Brunei, he had his own nightclub. Maybe he still does.
Okay.
So he had his own night. He has like 500 Ferraris. Like these guys have insane amounts of money because it's not public.
Yeah.
Right. So they don't have to be like the world's richest men. Exactly.
Yeah.
But they're richer than everybody.
Yeah.
Right. They have trillions.
Yeah.
And so he had his own nightclub.
Okay.
And so what he would do is he would pay actresses. He would find these girls, get me her, and he would get these gals and give them exorbitant amounts of money to come. And then he would have a nightclub where it was only him. And he would go down there and it's filled with gorgeous women. And he would go down there and just go, you, come with me. And then they'd go fucking party. And they were making a lot of money. And one of them was writing a book. And so she had a laptop and she was like documenting all. They confiscated her laptop, and then she went back to America. That she spilled the beans and she ratted out all the other girls that were doing it. And it kind of fucked up the whole thing because like A-list people were getting shit tons of money.
This thing
to go over there and party.
Know.
Yeah, I don't say A-list, but
no. A-list
people that you
models.
know. Yeah,
there's like
people you know of. And if you go there, you get millions of dollars. Bro. Like this lady had gotten millions of dollars in jewelry from him.
There's a service that apparently where like
I love that word.
yeah, apparently, right? Where
Allegedly.
like billionaires can fuck like Sports Illustrated models and shit, and like Victoria's Secret chicks that we've seen, and it's costs a lot of money. And they do it because it's like, hey, it's easier than going to do these shoots.
Right.
It's the easiest
and
money.
they don't want to tell anybody that they did it.
They don't, and also they're getting to fuck billionaires. They're not fucking some random crackhead.
Right.
They're gonna already fuck the billionaires, so it might as well make some fucking money doing it. And it exists now.
And you know about this allegedly?
Allegedly, I may know people who have partaken. So it's like,
And they
this
can
exists.
Bang like cover of Maxim.
I don't know the cover. I don't know what's going
Whatever.
on.
Just
You
some
know.
hot ladies that you are aware of.
But they're not just hot chicks that come from Russia, right? We're
Right.
talking about
Famous people.
that you would never think would even need to do that.
Right.
So just these are like the ecosystems that exist out there.
Well, it makes sense if you're worth $200 billion and you
can't
give
fuck some
someone $1
random
million to fuck you. That is nothing. You make that in 5 minutes.
Sultan of Brunei spending.
Okay. In 2001, Jeffrey was forced to auction off his personal possessions after using the country as a piggy bank, spending an average of $747,000 a day for 10 years, on top of the $17 billion in gifts to friends and family. The Sultan's true vulgarity was exposed. His brother also treats the country as an ATM, and it remains a crime in Brunei for anyone to ever discuss how the royals spend their money.
When you don't work for your money, how can you value it? Like if it just comes right out the ground, like how do you really think $10,000?
Bro, that dude is spending. How much was he spending a day?
So I was into the math.
That's so crazy. He lives in a palace with 1,788 rooms, 257 bathrooms, 5 swimming pools, a mosque, a banquet hall that holds 5,000 people, and a 110-car garage. When he turned 50, the Sultan built a stadium, invited Michael Jackson to perform in it, and paid him $17 million for 3 concerts. Jeffrey, 59, maintains a separate pleasure palace and once owned a 150-foot yacht called the Tits. He called his yacht Tits.
Nice.
He named his fenders Nipple 1 and Nipple 2.
Love it.
And he could never understand why others found that juvenile and crass. Here and abroad, the brothers are infamous for their sex parties and their harems composed mainly of underage girls.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Wow. Wild. Bro, that amount of money that he's spending, that is so crazy.
$3 billion plus. But that doesn't. That's like I said. It didn't include the $17 billion that he was giving out to people.
Wow.
It said up here too. Did you mention the Michael Jackson thing for his birthday?
Yeah.
Okay.
That dude's balling, son.
But yeah, these fucking things exist all over the place.
Crazy.
And it's the easiest money that these girls will ever make.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's so, if you've got that much money,
it doesn't mean anything.
It doesn't mean anything.
They light it on fire.
And the money's coming every day. It's just stacking up. Giving someone $1 million to fuck. And the girl's probably like, wait, $1 million? Just regular sex? He's not going to shit on me? He's not going to give me the Cincinnati top hat? Or whatever the fuck.
Now, eventually, the prince paid out a ton of lawsuits, and for all intents and purposes, even though he had to pay a bunch of lawsuits out and he was a total sex freak, he's still crazy rich today, and he's now 69 years old. Y'all, you cannot make that story up. So if you ever wondered what it's like to be the richest man in the world and have money that you really could care less what anything cost, there you go. That's what you do with it when you are Prince Jeffery, and that is his story. Now, with that, I got a little something extra for you today, or lagniappe as we call it here in South Louisiana. So I've received a lot of messages through the Facebook, and incidentally, go follow the Facebook page if you're not following it already. Just search Exposed Scandalous Files of the Elite on Facebook. It'll pull it up and you can stay updated with everything we're doing. You can send me messages to suggest scandals of the elite. Now, it's got to be, this is different than a typical true crime podcast in that we focus on society and people that would be considered elite in society. It doesn't mean they have to be filthy rich. I've done one on a police officer before. So if they're elite in the manner of trust, a teacher, something like that, We may do something on them, but we like to keep it to topics that you would know, no matter who you are anywhere in the world, you would know who these people were. So feel free to send me a message. But I got something, a little treat for you today. I've gotten a lot of messages about lawsuits of famous brands that were what people would consider ridiculous. Frivolous lawsuits, a big thing here in the United States, and there's a lot of big companies that have kind of been or fell victim to that. Some really bizarre lawsuits. So I'm going to give you a few of them just quickly. Shout out to Sarah Reniger, who messaged me and asked me if I would cover any of those. And I'm going to cover a few of them for you here. They're really short, but they're really interesting. The first, how about Starbucks? Everybody's heard of Starbucks. A Chicago woman by the name of Stacy Pincus. She filed a $5 million class action lawsuit against Starbucks in April of 2016, and she claimed the company put too much ice in its cold drinks. The lawsuit accused Starbucks of advertising iced drinks as 24-ounce beverages when the cup contained only 14 ounces of fluid. Yep. The result of that lawsuit, and it was named the most frivolous lawsuit in 2016 by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Institute for Legal Reform, was dismissed, as you would imagine, by a federal judge in late of 2016. So she did not get her $5 million. How about the Hershey Company? A guy by the name of Robert Bratton of Missouri filed a lawsuit, and he claimed the Hershey Company intentionally sells partially filled packages of Whoppers, Reese's Pieces, and other products. In May of 2017, his $5 million lawsuit was given the green light to move forward, believe it or not. And in 2018, his case was thrown out by a district judge, concluding that Bratton wasn't really harmed because even though he realized the packages of Reese's Pieces and Whoppers weren't full, he continued to buy them. And buy he did. Over the course of a decade, it was discovered, and I don't know how they figured this out, but it was discovered he bought over 600 packages of Whoppers and Reese's Pieces. Dude's got a sweet tooth. How about Subway? In 2013, a group of Subway customers filed a class action lawsuit against the chain, claiming its foot-long subs didn't always measure up to 12 inches. Before the lawsuit was consolidated, some plaintiffs were seeking up to $5 million from the sandwich chain. And I don't know what's up with this $5 million, but that seems to be the magic number. U.S. District Judge Lynn Alderman called the case quite weak, and Subway was cleared of deceptive marketing practices, but agreed to make sure subs were proper sized in the future. How about Beck's Beer? In 2013, several beer drinkers of Beck's Beer filed a class action lawsuit against Anheuser-Busch, seeking upwards of $5 million. There's that $5 million again. They claimed deceptive packaging caused them to believe the beverage was manufactured in Germany. Production was actually moved to St. Louis in 2012 for that beer, which originated in Germany. But there was nothing that said made in the USA on the label. So they sued. But here's a surprise for you. The court actually ruled in the plaintiff's favor, and a magistrate judge approved a settlement for customers who purchased Beck Pilsner, Beck Dark, Beck Light, and Oktoberfest beer from 2011 to June of 2015, and those with receipts. So if you keep your beer receipts, you were in luck. They were able to file a claim for up to $50 per household, or up to $12 without a receipt. Now, that was a tricky part for me. So what, did you just have to say you bought it and you get $12? I guess so. How about Fear Factor? Remember that show on NBC? Hosted by Joe Rogan, incidentally. A viewer by the name of Austin Aitken, he sued NBC for $2.5 million in 2005 because a segment where contestants ate rats mixed in a blender caused him to vomit and run into a doorway. He felt the stunt went too far, but was unable to turn off the television fast enough to avoid the stunt. However, the outcome was not what Aiken had hoped for. His frivolous lawsuit was dismissed, and the judge warned him against filing an appeal. You got to laugh at that. How about Anheuser-Busch again? So a guy named Richard Overton sued Anheuser-Busch in 1991 for $10,000, claiming that its advertisements were untrue and misleading. He stated that Bud Light's TV commercials led consumers to buy products that were dangerous and could lead to addiction or death. According to the lawsuit, he pointed to television advertisements featuring Bud Light as the source of fantasies coming to life. Tropical settings, beautiful women and men engaged in unrestricted merriment. And as it turned out, drinking beer does not automatically mean that you'll be transported to a tropical island and inhabited by beautiful people. He sought monetary damage because he believed the advertisements caused him physical, mental injury, and emotional distress, as well as financial loss. So what do you think the court did in this case? Well, they not only dismissed the case, he had to pay some money for causing the court so much trouble in the amount of $2,700. Universal Studios, let's talk about them. People attend Universal Studios annual Halloween Horror Nights to enjoy fun and frights, but one grandma, she got more than she bargained for. She sued Universal Studios in 1998 for emotional and physical distress and damage stemming from a visit to one of the haunted house attractions. At the end of a haunted house, the grandmother was visiting with her grandchild. A man wielding a chainsaw frightened them, so they hurried for the exit door. Unfortunately, there was a puddle outside that door that caused her to slip and fall, and she sued Universal for $15,000 for physical injuries. Actually, she may have a little bit of case with that. I mean, this is a grandmother. If she's legitimately hurt and they were not cautious with all that outside, she's got a case there. And actually, the Universal Studios must have thought that as well, because they settled with her out of court. How about Home Depot? In a recent court case, a group of Chicago plaintiffs filed a class action lawsuit against Home Depot because the store's 4x4 lumber actually measured out to 3.5 by 3.5 inches on each side. Home Depot and other lumber suppliers have explained that 4x4 is just the name of the boards. It's industry standard dimensions that they are actually 3.5 by 3.5 inches. Nevertheless, they wanted more than $5 million in damages. And a district judge, well, he didn't agree with them either. He sided with Home Depot and dismissed the case. McDonald's, a California resident, Webster Lucas, sued the company for $1.5 million in 2014. You ready for this? Get ready. Because he only received one napkin with his meal. After a potentially racially charged argument with the manager, he was offered free burgers, but he claimed the incident left him emotionally distressed and unable to work. Come on, y'all. Lucas is no stranger to taking on fast food corporations. Prior to following the lawsuit with McDonald's, he had filed one against Jack in the Box twice, and he didn't get anything in those cases. And of course, he did not get anything in the McDonald's case. But you wonder why insurance prices are so high for car insurance and liability insurance if you're a business. Well, there's some good examples why. I mean, all of these pretty much, with the exception of one that I've covered, are absolutely frivolous and ridiculous. And I'm going to give you one more. And this is Google. Nowadays, it's hard to imagine getting around without Google Maps, right? But one woman, she might have taken the app's directions a little bit too literally. Lauren Rosenberg, she sued Google in 2011 after the search engine's map tool instructed her to walk across a rural highway. Now, instead of taking a safer route and allowing Google to recalculate, Rosen followed exactly what Google suggested. She walked across the highway into oncoming traffic and ended up getting hit by a car. She was seriously injured and sued both Google for negligence, failure to warn, and defective design, and she sued the driver of the car that hit her. Google asked a district court in Salt Lake City to dismiss the claim, and the district judge granted Google's request of dismissal, finding that they were not at fault and that common sense should have played a part in her decision to walk right in front of oncoming traffic. So there you have it. I wanted to give those to you. Thank you to that listener that sent me that request. And I'll try to fill these from time to time for you when I do shorter Scandalous Files of the Elites. And if I can fit them in under, where we remain around that 45-minute to an hour time mark, I will do so. Thank you so much for listening to Expose Scandalous Files of the Elite. And until next time, I'm Jim Chapman. Much love.